Hello, this is Brooks Whittington with halfwheel.com. Today I'm taking a look at the Guillotina de Saka, which translates from Spanish to Saka's guillotine, a single guillotine cutter developed by Steve Saka, founder of Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust, in collaboration with Luigi Lucente, a product development engineer at Cigar Medics Incorporated. Now, Lucente also developed the Baller, a cigar cutter that combines aspects of both a punch cutter and a V cutter into one product, and you can see my review of that cutter on Half Wheel as well. Now, originally, these single guillotine cutters were just given out to retailers as sales incentives, but they are now available for a sales price of $3.95 each, and they only come in one color, this OD green that you see here. All right, now, as I mentioned before, the Guillotina de Saka is a single guillotine style cutter, and it's made with a 420 stainless steel blade inside of a stainless steel exterior case. Now, according to Saka, who worked as a Drew Estate executive and partner from 2005 to 2013, the impetus behind the Guillotina de Saka came from his experience using a couple of different cutters, one of them being a cigar brisk tool, a single guillotine cutter with a plastic body that Drew Estate sold until about 2000, and the other was the Paul Grammarian Super Sheffield cutter, a legendary cutter, single guillotine again, cutter that I have reviewed on this very site that you can read whenever you would like. Now, this cutter has a couple of unique aspects which need to be mentioned. One of them is the fact that the stainless steel blade can be replaced very easily by anybody with no special tools at all. And in order to do that, it's actually a fairly simple matter. You basically open up the blade as you see here. You push down in this section, which releases the lock there, and then the blade comes out on the tray. Now, you can take this blade off of here, as you see. There's a notch right there. You take the new blade, which I'm just going to use the same blade here, and you attach it to that notch right there. Make sure that it goes right in there. There's only one way that it goes. And then you just slide it right back in there. Now, the blade only goes one way, so that's very simple to figure it out. And you have to make sure that that notch right there, which is what locks it in place, goes down, and then push it in, and you are done. You have a brand new blade, easy as pie. Now, the other thing that is very cool about this cutter is the fact that there are actually two openings that have two different sizes for cigars. So you can decide how much you want to take off or how big, which size ring gauge that you want to cut. The back has the plus side, which means that there's a little bit more room, and the front has the minus size, which is for smaller ring gauges. And you can see when you put in the cap into the first side, the smaller size, you can see how much of that cap you can actually cut to the max. You take it out and put it on the other side, and you can see that there's a little bit more that you can cut off there. It's not a substantial difference, but there is enough that you can actually fit a larger ring gauge in there and cut enough off of there, easily 60 and up to about a 70 ring gauge or so if you were just cutting a little bit off of that cap. All right, but enough about all that. Let's cut some cigars. So the operation of the Guillotina de Saka is quite similar to a number of other single guillotine cutters on the market. And you can see that it is very simple to actually use. You basically pick it up. You push up on this section here, which releases the blade, which is on a spring. It's a very smooth process. Then you take the cigar that you're going to cut, you put it into the opening. You choose either the smaller opening here with the minus sign or a plus sign for the larger opening. You line up the cap here. You make sure you're cutting off how much you want, which is very simple with this cutter. You can see exactly how much you're cutting there. And then you basically just push down and push that through. I'm trying to line it up to make sure it's straight. Always a problem for me. So you line it up and push through, and you have yourself a nice clean cut, as you see here. Now, the cool thing about, one of the cool things, not the only cool thing, about this is that you can see here the cap is actually held right there on the blade. You can open that up and release it anywhere you want after you are done, instead of it just having it fly off. Sometimes it did fly off every once in a while, but for the most part it stayed right there on that blade. All right, now, as per usual, I'm going to go through some good things and some bad things about this cutter, some things I loved and some things I wish necessarily were not the case. So, starting out the list of really great things I love about this cutter is the fact that it cuts cigars really well. Very important for a cigar cutter. When I picked this up, I knew I was going to get a consistently good cut no matter what size, no matter what vitola. It didn't really make any difference. I had no major issues with this at all. There were no times that I used this cutter that it had damaged the wrapper in any major way. There was every once in a while when it would have a small piece of tobacco left over, but it was very few and far between in terms of that. I was pretty constantly surprised and amazed at how well this cutter actually cuts cigars. Very, very good cuts. Secondly, as I showed you before, the blades are very, very easy to take out and replace on your own. I'm not mechanically inclined, and I can assure you if I can do this, then anybody can, just about. And it's very, very simple, and you don't necessarily have to have change the blade necessarily. That's a talk for another day, perhaps. But if you ever do need to, if you damage it somehow and need to change the blade, then this is a very simple process to do. Also, the cutters actually come with an extra blade, so you don't have to actually look for one or buy one separately. They come with it in the box. Third, the cigar caps, for the most part, are held in place right after you cut the caps off of those cigars. It depends on how hard you push down on the blade. If you snap it and do it really, really hard, sometimes they fly off. But for the most part, if you do it in a nice, even motion and push through, they're going to be left right there on that blade, and you can basically just open it up and put it into an ashtray or wherever you want to at your leisure. A nice thing to have. Finally, these are made in America for those that care. All right, now having said all that, there were a few things that I didn't necessarily like about this cutter, and that starts with the price. $3.95 is a lot of money for a cutter, any cutter, and they're going to see some people who probably balk at paying that for this cutter. Secondly, the fact is that price does not come with a case of any sort. It really should. It would certainly give some added value to the whole package, but I think that a case would really, really help. The third issue, which I have with this cutter, which is the fact that there are some minor details here, minor rubbing off of the paint, mostly on the corners and the edges, as you see here. Some people might like that look. I don't necessarily like it, but after carrying it around in my pocket for about a month, pocket in my bag, it's definitely not as bad as it could be, but it's noticeable, and it's probably only going to get worse. Now, we can't talk about the Guillotina de Saka without mentioning the Il Maestro from Cigar Medics. And as you can see, both of these cutters are very similar visually, but they do have other similarities. First of all, they both have the same blade. Both of those blades on both cutters can be replaced with no special tools like I showed you before. And both of these cutters have the same spring inside, and so they have the same motion when you're opening and closing the cutters. And both of them have the same openings for smaller ring gauges cigars on the front and large ring gauge cigars on the back. However, the most important thing, perhaps, that they share is the performance. And both of these cutters perform excellently. In fact, there was virtually no difference at all when I tested these cutters side by side in terms of how they cut cigars and how few problems they had. Neither one of them had any major problems at all over the month of testing that I did, and they both performed excellently on pretty much every cigar that I threw at it. Now, having said that, there are some differences, and the first one, the major one, is the price. The Cigar Medics version of this cutter comes in at a $124.99 price tag, while the Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust comes in at $395 MSRP. And that's obviously a fairly significant difference. And there are some other minor differences when it comes to the actual cutters themselves physically. As you can see, the Dunbarton is just a little bit taller, and it also has a little bit of a ribbed side here on both sides, whereas the Cigar Medics is flat. Also, the closing mechanism, the locking mechanism, is different between these two cutters. And that is because the Dunbarton has a magnet inside. You can see the photograph in the review. while the Cigar Medics is a locking mechanism that locks that in place. Both of them open up the same, but the closing is quite a bit different, quite a bit smoother on the Dunbarton as opposed to the Cigar Medics, which is more of an industrial feel and clicks. It's louder too. Now, I did love the Dunbarton a little bit more, just simply because of the how it feels in my hand and how much grip I have on with those ribbed edges. However, as I mentioned before, those are minor changes, differences, and really had no impact on how well both of these cigar cutters cut cigars. And so in the end, after all of that, can I recommend the Guillotina de Saka? The answer is no, but I say that with a little bit of sadness. And that's because I truly believe that this cutter is one of the best single guillotine cutting options on the market today. It is built well, it is designed well, and more importantly, it cuts cigars extremely well. Very, very few minor problems, no major issues whatsoever over the month-long testing that I did for it. Unfortunately, I can't in good conscience recommend something that costs this much money when there is a product that costs less than a third of that total amount, and you get the exact same results from it. It's not as well built, it's not as smooth, and it doesn't feel as good in your hand, but all of these are very minor issues when it comes to actually getting great results. The good news is that either way you go, either the more affordable option or the premium option, you're going to get amazing cuts. So that's my opinion. For all of your review and news needs when it comes to premium cigars, go to halfwheel.com.